we always begin by reading some emails to you that we get from around the country and around the world, and we have some interesting emails and some interesting phone calls. Got an email from Sandell Wall. I don't know where Sandell is from. This email is a complete shot in the dark, but I can't resist the attempt. I recently ran across a YouTube video of yours and was astounded to hear the truth you teach. Truth backed up by history and logic. I'm no scholar, theologian, or philosopher, but my bookshelf and internet bookmarks are full of works of men like John Gill, very good teacher, Arthur Pink, Gordon Clark, and Herman Hoeksema. I have all these men. I'm sure you are awful busy, but I was wondering if you would be willing to correspond with me via email. Well, you'll have to correspond with Tom or with my wife, Mary. I don't have time to get on the internet and correspond. If I did, I'd have to get on 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Over the past 8 years of my life, I've been chased out of churches, called a heretic by pastors and professing believers, and essentially find myself cut off from the community of believers because, well, it's not a community of believers if they don't believe these truths. Because I spread the message of the sovereignty of God in salvation, election, and predestination. I get blacklisted for not celebrating Christmas or Easter, shunned for saying that I've never been baptized or allowed to participate in the Lord's Supper. Just recently, yet another pastor has told me I can have no place in his church if I do not publicly accept all doctrine and creeds with which they hold. It hurts, it's painful. Well, it shouldn't be. That's not church, and those are not preachers. All I want to do is share fellowship with people who hold the same truths. Well, those people in those free will churches do not hold the same truths. You might as well go down here to some bar and you'll find more agreement there. I'm not putting my approval on that, but you're going to find as much agreement down here with a drug dealer because they don't have any truth in these churches that are so dear to me. I have all but given up finding a Christian wife or friends and contemplate a bleak and lonely future cut off from the church. Well, come here and join us, and you can join a club called the Young Men of Grace and Truth. Okay? I'm beginning to lose hope and desire to fight the good fight. I'm only 28. I can't imagine enduring another 40 years of this. Wherever you are, come visit us or come move here or come see us. Even if you don't read this, or you do and don't respond, I'll probably still watch every YouTube video of yours I can find. In Christ, Sandell. Okay, well, we read it. Okay? And then Jeff Bollinger writes to us. He says, hello. I have recently, he's in Henderson, New York. I've recently come across a site that is telling why Jim Brown is a false teacher. You have heard Jim already talk about questions they accused him of, and I was very satisfied with his answers. I was hoping you could ease my mind on another issue. They state that Jim is a Kabbalist. That's very funny. That's because I teach gematria. I teach that some of the Kabbalists don't teach the exactness of gematria. They try to stab at it, but Kabbalah is just a Jewish superstitious study of mythology of sorts. Is there any truth to that statement? No. I know he uses gematria, but I'm pretty sure it's not in regards to Kabbalah. Absolutely not. Please forgive me if this is offensive. I just needed to ask. Thank you. Jeff Bollinger, live for God. No, it don't bother me when people say these things. I mean, they're supposed to lie about me. Jesus said they're going to lie. They said he cast out devils by Beelzebub and said he was a Samaritan, and he wasn't. Jeffrey Lewis, Shelbyville, North Carolina. Thank you so much for the DVDs, and thanks again for speaking the truth. Hope all is well. I think you might be the best preacher in the world. Huh. I don't know about that. In the eyes of the believers, and the worst preacher in the world right now in the eyes of everyone else. You're probably right about that. So keep up the good work. And then Janet and Carson Elmore write from Oklahoma City, finishing disc 2688 in the History of Israel series, Ready for More, 2058 and 2086. Another month has gone by and it's time to write again. We are ready for the next in the History of Israel series. The place we are in, the series, ends in disc 2688, so the next will be eagerly awaited. There are a couple of other messages which cut out on the internet, and we would like to receive them. If possible, to expand our understanding of the subject, 2058 and 2086. Thank you for your time and what you do. It is wonderful to hear God's word in truth and to prepare for an active Christian walk. All thanks and praise to God for sending me to Grace and Truth Ministries. Janet and Carson Elmore in Oklahoma City. And Ray Lehman writes from Ohio. Jim, this is Ray Lehman out in Ohio. I would appreciate if you do not read, oops, you don't mean read that on camera. All right. Phil and Velma Johnson, our dear brother and sister up in Columbus, Ohio, writes, hey, Pastor, just a note to say hello all, and I have not been able to write to you all since the picnic. What a great time we had in fellowship. The weather's wonderful, and hopefully we will be able to attend the chili cookout in October. We also was able to fellowship with Brother Alfred Rodriguez and his family here in Columbus. We had a fellowship picnic this past Sunday with Phil and I, Terry and Marcy Newsom, and Judy Thomas, Marcy's mom. I am so thankful that God has truly given us one another to share this truth with. Thank everyone down there for all the hard work on the picnic. Missing you all dearly. Can't wait to see you all again. Agape and Flail, Phil and Velma Johnson. We love you guys very much. Bill Gannon from Albany, New York. Hello, Jim, Mary, and Tom. Would you please send me the following DVDs? And one is Resurrection is the Gospel, Baptism of Repentance, Prepare the Way of the Lord, and One Baptism, Holy Spirit, and Baptism in John the Baptist. Bill Gannon, Albany, New York. Then I got a letter from Conwell Scott. Conwell came to the picnic from California, and let me see here. I think I read the back of it. Let me see. Hi, my name is Conwell Scott. My email address. Oh, this is for going on some TV out there, I guess. Yeah, public access. He's wanting to represent us, and he sent that. This is a lady who don't like what I say. I'm going to read this too, okay? She writes me long letters and gives me thunder. Dear Jim, a man by the name of Harold Camping. Yes, I know that man. He predicted the end of the world in 1994, and then he predicted it last year, whenever it was, December, I think. And he keeps predicting the end at all these wrong times. No man knows the day nor the hour. Dear Jim, a man by the name of Harold Camping is older than you, and he studied the Bible for 70 years. Now, he is 91 years old. Well, I guess that makes you qualified. We can go down here and find a 95-year-old wino down on Broadway, and we can use him for our theologian. We can start consulting him. If you can get somebody that's older, that means they're smarter. And his name is Harold Camping from Family Radio. He might have gotten things wrong, but at least he admits it. He keeps doing it over and over. That's like a guy robs a bank and repents of it, and then he goes back and robs another one down the street the same day. When you are a teacher, you have to admit when you're wrong. Jim, you teach everything correct, but divorce is a no-no. People did not celebrate Christmas in America 300 years ago, but they did not divorce either. They didn't. You mean nobody was divorcing 300 years ago? No, me. Or rather, maybe not as much. Oh, okay. You want advice, remember you are not the only one in the world who knows the word of God. Go to, in the Family Radio, and look for a man who knows more than you, is old enough to be your father. Well, my father was old enough to be my father, and he didn't know anything. And if he was alive, he'd be 100 next year. So maybe I can go out and consult with his dead body. And by the way, he speaks Hebrew and Greek. Well, so does Benny Hinn. Benny Hinn speaks Hebrew. What does that mean? And writes the language too. Tough love, Jim, from Catherine LaSalle. I used to like you. I don't like you anymore. I don't even know Catherine. Catherine, I'm sorry. We don't mean to be making fun of you, but gosh, you're writing this stuff? But you have to admit when you are wrong and teach 100% right. By the way, that night when you told me, everyone, when you read my email at, are you watching? I'm reading it again. My email at the Correspondence, you told them I talked to you about Matthew 5, but you should have told them the truth that I was speaking about Matthew 19. I think you're talking about when the Pharisees said, can a man divorce his wife for every cause? Do you know anything about halakha? Do you know anything about synagogue doctrine? Do you know anything about what the Pharisees believed about divorce in their halakha and their haggadah? Huh? Am I going to answer this? No. In 1 Corinthians 7, I explained that. I explained if a woman is married to a man and she is pleased to stay with him, pleased does not mean she wants to stay. That's not what it means. It's the word sunudokeo. It means to think well with her husband, stay with him, and not fight him over the truth, and have the same agreement with him, not necessarily believing, but don't give him a hard time over truth. That's the only way she's supposed to be pleased to dwell. That's what that word means. I explained that to her on the phone, and evidently she didn't hear it. Thanks for lying. Thanks for lying. You're supposed to be true in the word. You got me upset. Okay, gosh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Well, no, I'd be lying if I said. You need to watch my whole series on Matthew, the 5th chapter, and the halakha and the haggadah. And you've heard it had been said, and what Jesus said about the Pharisees. The Pharisees believed they could divorce their wives for every cause, and that's why they asked him that in Matthew, the 19th chapter. They believed they could find their wife out on the streets dancing around, twirling, acting silly with a bunch of kids, and they could say, I divorce you, get out. And all she could take with her was what she had on her person. And Jesus was sick and tired of the women being turned out in the street among the Pharisees. Where do you get that? Out of Jewish culture and history. Mr. Edersheim, these books I've got up here, the McClintock and Strong, the Hastings, and I've read so much on this. I don't have any idea how many halakha series I've got and how many tapes I did on the divorce thing. I didn't say you're supposed to go around divorcing. You only divorce for fornication. However, if the woman is involved in adultery or fornication, according to Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter, give the woman a bill of divorce. The bill of divorce was an equal division of the property so she could go and be married to another. That's the very words. And that was called the get, G-E-T. The proper word is G-I-T-T-I-M, getum. And if that happens, then she can go and be married to somebody else after she's committed adultery with her husband, but she can't go back and marry him again. Now, you're going to have to deal with this. If you don't know nothing about the Pharisees and their halakha, and if you have no idea what a halakha is, Jesus addressed that from Matthew, the 5th chapter, all the way through Matthew, the 23rd chapter, and we've been hitting that every Sunday night, and I have done 100 or 150 messages connected to that. And I don't know what, but just to write me and be insulting and you don't like it because I laugh at it, that's the best thing to do is just laugh because it's ridiculous what you're saying. It's just outrageous. And Harold Camping, I'm quite sure, knows nothing about the halakha. Walk up to a Jew and ask him about halakha. He'll know exactly what you're talking about. Mary asked a woman down here, she was down at Rivergate and she was selling something, and she said, well, I'm not involved in anything. I just go along with the customs of the Jews. Mary said, you believe in Holocaust. She said, yeah. How do you know? Yeah. She was a Jew. She knew. And Jesus condemned the Holocaust. That's what he was doing. Goodness gracious. I talked to Jim Clark. Jim Clark is in Dublin, Ireland. Talked to him this afternoon. Talked to him for a long time. He's 44 years old. He loves this message. And he wants to meet the other people in Ireland that write to us. What's the names of the Tyndalls and Daryl and the Caffreys? We're going to put him in touch with them, and he's going to try to come over here and see us. He said, how can I learn all these things? I got to talking to him. Of course, Ireland, majority of Ireland is Catholic, and the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, is always attacking English people because the Church of England and the Irish are at war with each other. And the Church of England comes out of Roman Catholicism, and it's all the same thing, and they don't even know that. So anyway, they make all kinds of movies about the IRA. And but he said, I asked him, I said, do the Catholics in Ireland, do they resent this kind of a message? He said, 95% of the church-going people in Ireland are Roman Catholic, and about 5% are other. And but he said, I love this message, and that's fantastic. And he wants to meet these other folks, and we're going to stay in touch with him. And he's moving. He's selling in some house that his mother owned before she passed away. I got a very interesting email from Clinton Derricks Carroll. He's got a twin brother, and he wrote this letter. He said, Jim and Mary, sorry that I was unable to fly in and meet you at the picnic. I've been getting ready to start rehearsals for a festival in Australia next month. My brother and I, that's his twin brother, have been studying with Shepherd's Chapel for about 14 years. Around November of last year, we were in Washington, D.C., tending to some copyright research concerning my dad's music. He was a composer of gospel music and a Baptist pastor. Well, I decided to look them up, and this is exactly the truth. His songs include titles such as Just a Little Talk with Jesus, When God Dips His Love in My Heart, When God dips His pen of love in my heart, writes my soul a message He wants me to know, His Spirit all divine. See, I know those songs. Fills a sinful soul of mine, when God dips His love. His father wrote that, and I had that on a record. My family had it on the Imperial Quartet record, which is where the Imperials got their name from. They bought it from Marion Snyder down in Texas. And I was listening to them in 1950 and 51, and I had this song on a record, on a 78 in our house. And I know the whole song, words and chorus. Well, I said I wouldn't tell it to a living soul, how he brought... This is an old black preacher from East Tennessee. And he wrote... Just a Little Talk with Jesus. I once was lost in sin, but Jesus took me in. And then a little light from heaven fills my soul. I'm very familiar with these songs. I can sing that verse and chorus. And I just thought this was very interesting. So I thought, I need to go online and check this guy out. I went online. He is a black actor. He was the black guy on Sliders, if anybody ever saw the Sliders series. I used to see that. And then he was also on Sanford and Son. He was Aunt Esther's son on there. So he's got a history, and he's real thrilled with this message. Very good-looking guy. In fact, if you remember him on Sliders, you remember that. And says, my brother was performing a play there at the time. So the copyright retrievers had asked us to go to the Library of Congress to get needed information. When God writes His love in my heart, dips His love in my heart, that is an old song. It was written in 1937. And I've heard every gospel singer under the sun sing Just a Little Talk with Jesus, and that's a bass-featured song, and they go way down low on that. And he says, we were watching the television while they were there in Washington, D.C., and came across Grace and Truth Ministries. We had never heard anyone like Jim before. He was quite bold, making statements that went against much of what we had been taught. I began to switch the channel, but something made me turn back to Jim. Again, he would say something like, God does not love everybody. My brother said, hey man, that guy's a false teacher. But something would not let me turn away anymore. Jim was even naming those who were not teaching truth, and his statements seemed to make sense. I watched Jim during the 5 days I spent in D.C. When I returned to Los Angeles, I found your ministry online. I don't have cable or internet at home because I can go get it free at the library around the corner. I've been studying with you since then. I went to my second home, London, England, for 5 weeks and could not wait to get back to Bible study with you. God has triggered something in me that makes me want to study more than I ever did before. Yeah, well, we don't know that his brother don't believe yet. It feels like an addiction. I need my fix every day. I purchased the books you recommend to check you out, and you've been spot on. I got a chance to speak with you. I remember talking to him about a month ago and was quite shocked that you picked up the phone. It felt like when I've met movie stars, but much more special. And he's met a lot of stars if he was on Sanford and Son and on Sliders. I'm going to start tithing to your ministry just as I was to Shepherd's Chapel. I always felt that their ministry was somewhat racist. It is absolutely racist. Shepherd's Chapel, if you're black, you don't connect with Shepherd's Chapel. That guy's an idiot. And I don't say that. I do not apologize. Arnold Murray preaches that the white Anglo-Saxon American is the true Jew and the white Anglo-Saxon English people. That's the true Jew. Now, if you're black, you get to go to heaven if you're a believer, but you have to sit in the back of heaven when you get there. And that is absolute racism. That's what and that's what Herbert W. Armstrong preached, where she came from, where her mom came from. They come up and say that Jeremiah, when Zedekiah's two sons, when they were killed before Zedekiah's eyes, the last king of southern Judah, before they were carried off into captivity, they say that Jeremiah took Zedekiah's daughters, went to England. Now, Zedekiah is of the tribe of Judah. So they say he took Zedekiah's daughters, went to England, and established the throne of God on the English throne. At the English throne is the true throne of God. Now, what are we going to do with Matthew, the 1st chapter, when the true throne of God comes down to Jesus? Then they say, this is what's idiotic about it. Then they say, and God never passed the throne through daughters. Never. I go into that in my teachings. Then they say, since England in the 1800s, when Herbert W. Armstrong started his teachings on the Worldwide Church of God, since that was back in the 1800s when he started it, England was the most powerful nation in the world. Therefore, England was Ephraim, and America was Manasseh, since America was the weaker of the two nations. Well, now, since we're the stronger of the two nations now, does that make us Ephraim and them Manasseh? Besides that, Ephraim and Manasseh comes out of the tribe of Joseph, not Judah. So why would two girls, which were never, God never passed the kingdom through women, why would you bring two girls who are daughters of Judah, and bring them to England and establish the throne of God on a Joseph throne. Joseph is the 11th son of Jacob. Judah is the 4th son of Jacob. And the throne is always, the scepter never departs from Judah. So they say that the white Anglo-Saxon is the true Jew and everyone else is secondary. You can believe God, but you go to heaven as a second-rate citizen, and that's racism. I don't care how you slice it. Isn't it? A Jew is a Jew of the heart. Circumcision of the heart. It don't matter what color you are. Now, I told a girl over here at Mimi's restaurant. She was waiting on us. She saw me with a T-shirt on. She said, "Are you familiar with the what's his name? Arnold Murray with Shepherd's Chapel? I worship with him." I said, "He's a racist." I just said it just like that, boom, like that. And she went, "He's not a racist." I said, "He certainly is." I said, "You want to explain it?" I said, "I'll explain it to you." She didn't want to hear it. I let her go. She was white. She didn't want to hear it. That Anglo-Israelism is a racist doctrine. It has nothing to do with the true Jew. The true Jew is of the heart. Circumcision is of the heart. You understand what I'm saying? And that's where that is. Besides that, the kingdom was not established through any descendants of Zedekiah. His 2 sons were killed right before him, right before his eyes. You see Jehoiakim right there? The kingdom of Christ was established through Jehoiakim. He was carried off to Babylon before the end of Israel. And Jehoiakim is in the lineage of Christ in the 1st chapter of Matthew. And Jeconias is a contraction for Jehoiakim. A contraction is like cannot, C-A-N-T, can't. That's a contraction. Jeconias is a contraction for Jehoiakim, and he's in the lineage of Christ. This is what's wrong with Anglo-Israelism and Herbert W. Armstrong, and anybody says they believe in it. It wasn't established through Zedekiah's descendants. It was established through Jehoiakim's descendants. Now, take that. I'm sick of that kind of stuff. And Clinton Derrick's Carroll is a black man. Get out of that. You don't get in that if you're black or if you're a Hispanic. That is heathenism. Arnold Murray's an idiot. I don't know if you know that. He says there's no hell. It's not eternal. You just burn up. Sounds like Jehovah's Witness, doesn't it? Now, let me finish reading the rest of this. I thought this was really interesting. He says, "I'm going to start tithing your ministry as soon as I was with Shepherd's Chapel. I always felt that their ministry was something racist." It's absolutely racist. "And you assured me that he is. I can't believe I was with them so long. My brother is still a little unsure about grace and truth, but he is slowly coming around." Well, being a black man, he don't have any business being with Arnold Murray. That's for sure. Now, my question is, how do we get the spirits in prison, 1 Corinthians 3:19, being the Gentiles and not angels? Well, that's a long explanation. Prison, phulake, means the division of day and night, of light and darkness. And forgiveness means to pardon and release from prison. And the Gentiles were in darkness from Adam till Christ. I checked my Thayer, Strong's, and Bowers Greek lexicons, but kept getting angelic spirits. That's because they don't understand. Also in the 1st chapter of Ezekiel, what is that he sees? It's like the highly polished bronze and can move without turning its head. Well, that's not exactly what it says, but I go into that in my Eyes of the Lord series. Very extensive teaching. There are people moving with it, not people. I'm not going to start explaining that. That's all night, isn't it? And it has the head of an eagle, a lion, and so forth, which are the standards that surround Israel's camp. Shepherd's Chapel says that Ezekiel sees God's vehicle with his throne on board, a flying saucer. I say, why would God need something to fly to fly in, or Christ for that matter. Did not Christ just walk through the wall of the house and speak to his disciples after his death? That's exactly what he did. Do you have a DVD on this subject? I've got, I don't know how many eyes of the Lord I've got on that subject. Those were the chariots of the Babylonians coming in to destroy Jerusalem. That's exactly what they were. I'm trying to get my brother away from that type of teaching. May God continue to give you both his blessings, love, and renewed strength. Love you and the church. I will visit before winter. Well, wonderful. I think that's a great email, isn't it? I'm going to read that again Sunday. I like that. That tickles me to death that I've already preached a message there on Anglo-Israelism. I hate Anglo-Israelism. It destroys the continuity of Scripture and destroys the spiritual Israel and spiritual Jew. Doesn't it? I mean, I don't like people who mess up God's Word. I don't like Arnold Murray. The guy is nuts. Somebody said they went through there and tried to see him and said they all drive brand new Mercedes and you can't get in to see them, and it's like trying to get in to see the president. I don't like that man. He hates predestination. He loves America, and he's got his flag up there, and he's patriotic, and I'm not patriotic. Patriotic comes from pater. That's the word father, and God is our father. I'm patriotic to Israel, spiritual Israel. That's who I'm patriotic to. Well, I'm sorry I took so long on that. I'll read to you and tell you about some phone calls we've got. John Robinson called us from Chicago. John's been listening with us for about 12, 14 years. John, keep watching, brother. We love you. Joyce Merkel in Stratford, Missouri. Donald Barish, Columbus, Ohio. Sean Heath from somewhere. How does a Christian deal with the balance of I can't even read it. Oh, law and grace. Well, I'll say something about that. Paula Pastoric, Norman, Oklahoma. Sherry Johnson out in Tucson, Arizona. David Moore, Prescott, Arizona. John Alexander, Antioch, Tennessee. Come visit us, John. Garfield Green, Far Rockaway, New York. And that'll be all. I don't have time to read these. I've already preached one message on. I did about a 12-message series on Anglo-Israelism. Now, back about 5 or 6 years ago. If you really want to know about it, I go into it in great detail. You got to be stupid to believe that God passed the kingdom down through daughters. That's the whole idea. That's the reason. When you go back to the 38th chapter of Genesis, that's why Tamar seduced Judah, because the seed was dying out. She seduced her father-in-law so the seed would not depart from Judah. And Tamar is in the lineage of Christ in the first chapter of Matthew. That's the same reason when Athaliah tried to kill all of the children of Jehoram, and this was the seed of Judah, she got them all but Joash. That's why God protected Joash. Remember that? That destroys that Anglo-Israelistic ungodly doctrine.